to, so let's get started. I'm gonna turn off my video there. All right, so thank you all so much for joining us for the Completing Your Annual IE Report within the Nuventive Improvement Platform. This session is specifically going to go over really what we need to get done for that September 1st due date, by or before that September 1st due date, pardon me, to meet that our assessment and annual improvement reporting. So real quickly, I know that a lot of this that's been going on is looking at our SAC-CSC reaffirmation. I'm sure many of y'all are familiar with that. That's been something very recent that we went through. We had a change in the last cycle to a May due date that was due in May 2023 in order to meet that September 1st submission date from SAC-CSC. We wound up meeting that and getting it in on time. So we did move up our due date last year to meet that SAC-CSC reporting deadline. This year we are back to September 1st, 2024 as our due date. The main sections of the reaffirmation report that dealt with SAC-CSC, that dealt with assessment is Section 8, Student Achievement, specifically 8.2a, which looks at academic program assessment, 8.2b, which looks like general education and undergraduate core assessment, and 8.2c, which is student support unit assessment. Also looks at Section 7, 7.3 specifically for administrative effectiveness, which is our other administrative support units. So, accreditation is the base reason, kind of that lowest reason that we engage in assessment. We engage in assessment for, a lot of purposes. The top ones being simply because we are here to learn and continue to improve our processes and our services to students. And we can do that through the systematic assessment process as we look at our student learning outcomes and our goals. If y'all are new to assessment, or if you're returning but maybe haven't used Nuventive very much or recently, Nuventive is the online platform that we are using to collect our assessment data. This platform creates a digital repository of assessment data that's easily accessible and web-based. It produces a reporting tool if you want to run a report. It saves the entered information, and it maintains the historical record of assessment data to help tell the story of your program or unit and what has occurred over time. That report that I mentioned is a 2-column assessment report. It has several important items and areas. This first one is going to be your student learning outcome or goal here at the top, followed by our first column, which is going to have your assessment method for assessing that student learning outcome or goal. In column 2, we have our results entry, and you'll notice that these will start to stack up over time. So above this will very likely be the 22-23 assessment data, then above that, the 23-24 assessment data. And then down here in section 4 is going to be our action use of results information. This is that really important, kind of the meat of the discussion or the story that tells us, we have these really wonderful results. We figured out what's going on. Here's an update on this goal or this learning outcome. And now here's what we're going to do about it, or here's what we're going to do with the data. So in this information, especially for our academic programs, we are really looking for changes to curriculum, pedagogy, adding learning resources, adapting or changing learning resources, that type of thing. We're looking for those really impactful changes that directly impact student learning. For our support units, we're looking for those impactful changes that go into the area of services offered. Maybe we're changing a service, maybe we're adding services, stuff like that. Maybe we are, using our assessment data in a totally different way to figure out what else we need to do. In our action use of results areas, we are not really looking for a narrative on how we're changing the assessment process itself. If you're moving from a paper-based survey to a digital survey, that's really wonderful, but in this action use of results, we're really looking for those changes that impact the student learning of the services being provided. So whenever you log into Nuventive, you can log in either through the IE webpage and clicking on the gold Nuventive login button, or through My Leo. There is a app card for Nuventive. It's very likely at the bottom of your page if you have not reorganized your applications or anything like that. I'm going to be logging in through the IE webpage for the demo today, but if you want assistance or are unsure how to log in through My Leo, you can just reach out and we are happy to help answer that question. So if you were to navigate to IE to log in, and let me put this link in the chat real quick if y'all don't have it or like to have it handy. So what I just put in the chat is the institutional effectiveness webpage link. So once you're there on the institutional effectiveness webpage, you would just scroll down, to assessment, and then Nuventive. Here's that gold login button. Close out of that. So hopefully it does not try to double log me in. There we go. Now, what might happen if you've been working in Nuventive a lot recently is that you're going to try to log in and it's going to give you nothing but that bouncing, in kind of that image that looked like that right there. And so it's just going to kind of stay on that page and not like you log in. If you look up here in the web address, if it has that bouncing logo and it's not letting you log in, and it has something like the number 2 and then SMAL or something like that, your Nuventive is trying to access a dead link when it logs you in. And so what I found it to be really helpful in that instance or in that situation is to go in and clear my cookies and my cache. And then that lets me log in again. If you have tried that and that doesn't work, let us know and we can set you up with the support team to figure out how to fix whatever's going on. So in our demonstration today, I'm going to be using a sample plan to kind of play around in a little bit. This may not look quite as up to date as yours, simply because we have several sample plans that we use to show different demonstrations, but we will go through and get it up to date today. So whenever you first log in, you'll be able to come up here to this main menu. If you author or review or work with multiple assessment units, in this main drop-down menu up here, you'll be able to access all the ones that you have assigned to you. You'll see that I have quite a few by virtue of my role in institutional effectiveness, but you will only have the ones I've been assigned, so you don't have to worry about scrolling through all of the assessment units on our campus. So whenever you navigate to the unit that you want to provide data for or information for, right, we always want to know where to start. How do I get my information in there? How do I get my results reported? Come over to your main navigation menu here, these 3 horizontal white lines, and come down to Plan and Results. So again, once you log in from your main screen, 3 horizontal white lines, Plan and Results. Whenever you click that and log in, it's going to bring you to your plan and results or your support or assessment or your student learning plan here. So what you're going to see is all of your student learning outcomes or goals on a single page. So in the sample unit, we have 3 goals that we're working with here. If you log in and you feel like you're missing information, or you're like, I know I put in a goal or a student learning outcome last year that I'm not seeing, come up here to your filters and make sure that you don't have any filters set. Because if you have a filter here for only active or phased out goals, or if you have a planned assessment cycle filter set here, you're only going to be able to see the student learning outcomes or goals that have that active filter. So if you think you're missing something, just make sure your filters are not set and you remove those. So once you're on this plan screen, right, our first step is going to be very likely, I have my assessment data results. What do I do with them? So you're going to go in by student learning outcome or goal individually and add that results data. Now to access where you would add the results information, you can either double click on the bolded information, that bolded name right there, or remove that filter. Or you can come over here to these 3 horizontal white lines and click open. Once in there, you'll notice that one of the major changes to that outline and preview of the Nuventive Improvement Platform is how things are organized. So now we have a card system. So the goal or SLO statement, the assessment method, and the results for every individual SLO or goal are organized from a central screen like this. To navigate between your student learning outcomes or goals, you can click close and go back out, or you have a handy little drop-down menu right here. And so as you're working, you can come through and use that little drop-down menu to navigate to all your different goals. You don't have to. If you find that that's difficult to use or remember, you don't have to use it. I find that it saves me a couple of seconds and helps me keep things better organized. Because I'm reporting my goals, I just go from the top down. So I just go through and make sure I've done all my, reporting for every single goal that I have, and I use this to help me keep it organized. So now that you are in this goal statement or SLO card, if you have any updates or revisions that you need to make here, maybe you're still using goal number 1 or SLO number 3 here, and you want to include a more definitive name, you can make that update. If you know for sure that this is going to be a goal or an SLO that you're going to be using in your upcoming planned assessment cycle, you could even go ahead and add those planned assessment cycles here if you want. So go ahead and add that 24-25 planned assessment cycle there. If you are phasing out a goal, you can go ahead and mark that phased out. You don't have to add a phase out date if you don't want, but some people find it helpful to have that information there because it helps provide that context around when things ended or they were phased out. If you're not phasing out a goal, you don't need to do anything right there. Don't add any dates. And so we're just going to kind of leave it as is. If you do make any changes, make sure you click save to record those changes. If you try to make a change and move on without saving it, it will catch you and stop you. But I want to point out real fast that it kind of asks a double negative. So it says you have unsaved changes on this page. Click OK to leave without saving your changes. So it can be a little bit confusing, right? So we're going to think, okay, take me back to so I can save my changes. If you click OK, it's not going to save your changes. So you just click cancel and then save. I'm going to click OK because I don't want to actually save those changes that I made. So and you saw me come over here and click the assessment method card. To navigate to your assessment methods, you can click in there. But again, we're going back to focusing on our results. So it's very likely that whenever you've started and you sit down, you finally have that time set aside to work on your reporting, you just want to get those results entries done, right? So again, you can, when you first log in, it will set your goal or your SLO statement card, and then you're just going to come over and navigate and click to your results card. Now remember, when we're adding assessment results, we don't want to edit or overwrite any of our existing results because that's that really good, rich historical data and information that we want to keep. So whenever you're adding assessment results for your assessment methods, always orientate to the plus sign. So the screen circle, the plus sign. When you hover over it, it says add results. Whenever you click on that for that assessment method for your SLO or goal, you'll still be able to see that up here at the top. It's going to automatically populate with today's date. That normally is perfectly fine. If it's really important for some reason that this reflects a different date, maybe you finally got some comprehensive exam results on August 19th, and that's the date you really want to reflect, you can click in here and change that date. Your reporting period is going to be 2023 to 2024. Yes, 2023, 2024. Sorry, y'all, it already feels like it's been a long week and it's only Wednesday. And so make sure that as you are adding your assessment results, so your results reflect this most recent academic year. So we're adding results for the fall 23 and spring 24 academic year. You're then going to provide your results discussion. And this is really that kind of deep, in-depth discussion that you're going to be sharing with people over what occurred for this assessment method to assess this for this goal. At minimum, we want to see a detailed description that includes the number assessed or your N equals, descriptive data, and analysis and interpretation of results. If you've been to any of my results reporting or using assessment to tell a story, presentations, and professional development, you'll know that I'm really big on telling that context and providing the context around your results that other people may not understand. So you know exactly what you do day in and day out. You are doing amazing work in your classrooms and in your offices and online and through emails with your students and your day-to-day work and in your service units and everything. But that's gonna be context that other people may not have. So as you're writing your results entry, you can even share it with someone else, maybe someone that does not work with you very closely, and just say, hey, do you understand what I'm trying to say here? Or do you understand the context under which I'm sharing these details or this information? Because we want to provide that really rich information to help tell the story of what occurred. So again, we're going to be looking for N equals. If you have any kind of percentages, like 80% of students or 50% of respondents, anything like that, you're going to have those percentages. You're going to describe what occurred. You're going to provide context. You're going to tell that story. Now, I know that as I'm talking about all this stuff that we're looking for here, it seems to just kind of add up and add up and add up. And before long, you're going to have an entire novel in here. And I want to let you know that there are ways to really be impactful and tell that information without having to, channel Charles Dickens. We're going to be looking for a little bit more of Ernest Hemingway in this context, just with what we're sharing. We really want to kind of choose valuable, impactful words to share that story. Please don't feel like you have to include 5 paragraphs to hit every single one of these things. We can do it all in a couple of sentences, a paragraph, and still tell that story and share that context. Next, you're going to identify your conclusion. We have either standard of success not met, inconclusive, or standard of success met. Inconclusive is only to be used if results were unable to be collected, and that's normally because the assessment method itself was not administered, maybe a survey wasn't distributed, that type of thing. If you have results that don't stick to an established trend that you're familiar with, it may simply be that that standard of success was not met. If they don't follow a trend, that's not inconclusive. Even if you only have 2 students, you still want to be able to analyze that data. And I know that kind of goes a little bit against some research practices, but we're still really trying to use that data that we collect every single cycle from our students to make impactful changes. So even if you have a small number of students in your program or that grad certificate, or maybe only 10 people took the survey all year, whatever that might be, use that data to correctly identify the conclusion. If you implemented an action plan or a modification in the prior year, this is where you can describe that impact it had on the results. If last year you decided that you wanted to use a new textbook, or you were looking at hiring or bringing on a subject matter expert, and that impacted your results data or the results that you collected, you can go ahead and describe that impact here in this area. Like I said, if you did digitize a survey that had previously been paper-based, and that increased your response rate and people were able to share more qualitative data, something like that, you can describe that change here. So we really have this item here to help us close the loop, where we're looking at the things that we said we're going to do or we want to do, and here's how it actually went. And then this last item, this action use of results, you'll notice that with this asterisk, this is a required item. So this is where you're going to describe how the results will be used, including actions being taken, modifications to operations or services. For our academic units, that's going to be modifications to pedagogy or curriculum, student learning, that type of thing. So again, if you were adding a textbook, if you're hiring a subject matter expert, if you are adding a new service, like with our Blue and Gold Money Center, if we're adding a new student service, or if we're adding a new HR process, that type of thing to help increase timeliness or improve response rates, whatever it might be, this is where you can add that action to results from what you've described in your results here. So this is where, again, we're going to talk about how we're going to be using those results that we collected to make those changes. And then finally down here, we have our related documents. This is not required, but if you do have some kind of document that you'd like to include in your results discussion, maybe you have a table that you keep, maybe you have a sample rubric that was used to provide an assessment, that type of thing, you can add those documents there. We do ask that you do not include examples of student work or completed student work and no identifying student information. This is not the place to house, graded tests or, tables of how your students performed on exams or anything like that. We don't want to have any identifiable student information in here because this is not necessarily the type of system to store that type of data. So again, you can add documents that support your assessment results. We don't want to have identified student information in here. So once you've added all this really rich, beautiful results data, you've told your story, you've described what occurred, you talk about what your plan for using those results are, we're going to make these amazing changes. Make sure you always save it. So we're going to come up here and click save. And now if I click close to navigate back out to the plan, you'll be able to see here for increased applications for the sample goal. It was last edited by Allison Soder on August 28th. I have this planned assessment cycle that I've added, so I'm going to be assessing this moving forward. And if I come back in here and navigate back to that results card, you'll be able to see that really recent results entry that I just added for 23-24. And so that's going to be another helpful navigation technique as you're looking at your results, is when you've added stuff, this blue circle, you can start to identify if 23-24 is next to that. So if you aren't quite sure, kind of lose where you are and Nuventive a little bit, and you're working your way through your goals or student learning outcomes, as you look in the results cards, we're just going to be looking for one 23-24 result entry there. Are there any questions about adding results before I move on to a little bit more specifics about updating the assessment plan? Okay. So we have come in and we've added all these really beautiful results entries. One last thing, and I know I was just talking about moving on, and I promise we will, but a helpful little navigation tip again, if you're working on your results and you still have this results card selected, if you come up here to your drop down to navigate between your learning outcomes or goals, if you click on the next learning outcome or goal, because again, remember, this is really helpful for keeping things straight and knowing what needs to be done next if you just work from the top down. If you come to click on your next learning outcome or goal, it's going to stay in the results card. So whatever card you're working on or working in, it will stay there as you navigate through. So you might find that to be really helpful as you are adding your results entries and you're just working your way down the list. It's going to automatically go over to results. And you'll be able to see here again, this sample goal has not had results added for 23-24 because the top date, the most recent date here at the top is 2020 to 2021. So again, you'd want to come over here to this add results and add a result and then complete that results reporting. So I just find it really helpful to use this to navigate between my goals and my learning outcomes. Again, if you find it to be confusing, you don't need to use it, and you can click close and come back out to your main plan screen again. So looking at adding and updating your assessment plan. So real quick in that prior example, I know I went through it a little bit fast, but I added that 2024 to 2025 assessment cycle. That's what we're going to be looking for to see what SLOs or goals are planned for assessment in the upcoming cycle. So if you have active learning outcome or goals that you are going to continue to use, you have active assessment methods that you're going to continue to use, it's very simple to update your plan. Again, you can double click on this bolded SLO or goal name, or come over here to those ellipses and click open. And again, you would just click this drop down in the planned assessment cycle to add the upcoming planned assessment cycle, which would be 2024 to 2025. To create that kind of commitment to assessing this learning outcome with this assessment method in that upcoming cycle. One thing I want to point out, and one of the reasons that we keep these kind of older goals or learning outcomes in these sample units, is that they do tend to have, this kind of lengthy history behind it. So A&M-Commerce first started using the Nuventive Improvement Platform in 2019. So this example unit has been using this sample, SLO since 2019. So it's quite a few years from 2019 to coming forward from 2024. That's about 5 years of assessing the exact same learning outcome, very likely with the exact same assessment method. If you come in and you have goals or student learning outcomes that have anything really kind of past, maybe 2022, 2021, I think that would be a really excellent time and opportunity to sit down with your department or your division and determine if these are goals and SLOs that you want to keep moving forward, especially if you have been successfully and consistently reporting standard of success met. That normally means, especially for our academic units, that your students, y'all are rocking and rolling, y'all are teaching that material really well. You have it down to a science to make sure that your students know that material and that information. And so it's probably a really good time to shift your approach or what you want to look at to other areas of learning or other areas of support. AI, artificial intelligence, is a really big discussion point. right now. And so there's definitely some academic programs, some of our units that might want to look at adding an artificial intelligence or an ethics of AI student learning outcome to your assessment plan, especially for our programs, our academic programs. Maybe learning to ethically use artificial intelligence or assess the information that comes out of those systems is really something that you want your students to be focused on and learning. Maybe there's a new class that's teaching that in your program, or maybe there's something within your program that is forward thinking or future thinking that you know that your graduates need to be prepared for in the next 2 to 3 years. And so you're going to start teaching those skills or that information now. So that's really a good time to go ahead and add that new student learning outcome to your assessment plan moving forward for 24-25, especially if you have some older goals or SLOs that have been hanging out for a while. Just something to think of if you are one of our programs or units that have some of these older goals hanging out that you want to, maybe phase out, or you want to discuss looking at developing new student learning outcomes or goals, reach out to either Amanda or I, and we are happy to meet with y'all and talk through that and talk through what that process would look like. So again, at the end of the day, very simple. If you have something that you're going to keep doing in the way that you've been doing it, just add 24-25 to your planned assessment cycle and click save. It's always worth going and checking your assessment methods as well to make sure that they are correct and up to date. So this sample goal has 2 assessment methods, which means that we assess it in 2 different ways. If you're assessing, especially student learning outcomes, we really want to look at both formative and summative assessment styles. You don't want to just assess learning at the very, very end as it's occurred, because you're not necessarily going to be able to identify where in the process students may have lost the thread a little bit, or where there might be opportunities to fine tune, a learning or a concept or something like that. So we want to really be able to look at learning that occurs along the way, as well as that cumulative or capstone learning assessment. When you're looking at this assessment method card, just like our results, you'll be able to scroll down and see here all of your assessment methods for this goal or this SLO. Again, if you need to edit or update anything, you can do that by double clicking on the bolded name or coming over to these ellipses and clicking open. Once in here, some things that you might check is if this is still an active assessment method, if you're still using it to assess this goal or this SLO. If it is inactive or will not be used, just come down and select inactive. Just double check your assessment type, make sure that still aligns with what you're doing. Go through and read through your assessment method description. Again, we really want to provide that context and that rich information to help others understand what we're doing. At the most basic level, if you win the lottery and you don't come back tomorrow, does someone have the information here to understand what needs to be done to kind of continue on with this assessment? Is it clear where in the process this is occurring, where data is stored? If it's a survey, do they know the name of the survey? If it's a Qualtrics or a Google or a SurveyMonkey, if it's a capstone exam, do we know what class it's occurring in? Do we know who is supposed to collect the survey data? Do we know who's supposed to administer the exam? That type of stuff. Is it all of our graduating students, or is it only students in a certain emphasis? That type of thing. We really want to be able to provide that rich information about what is occurring and how we're assessing that learning outcome or goal. And then come down here and double check your standard of success. We really want this to be that quantitative metric of what we consider to be success. So we don't necessarily just want it to be really low or something that we are going to be achieving all the time without any kind of striving or improvements. We do want to set a standard of success that pushes us to achieve or reach for more. And so we really want to ensure that our standard of success is aligned with the assessment method and related to the type of data. And again, we're going to be looking for that quantitative measure. So 85% of students will rate the services received as good or excellent. Maybe, 60% of the students will pass the exam on the first try, something like that. Now 60 might be a little bit low. Maybe we're really pushing it with like 85 or 90% of students. But we really want to identify that standard of success that pushes us to achieve more. And then this note section down here finally is an optional space for documenting any changes to the assessment method or standard of success over time. If your assessment method, maybe it's just changing the class that it occurs in. Maybe it used to occur in counseling 521 and that class is no longer offered. So now it occurs in counseling 538, that type of thing. It's still the same assessment method. We've just changed where it's occurring. And so you can add down here that change in class. If you increase your standard of success, maybe we're going to be looking for 65% of those applications being processed in an expedited fashion. We can have down here. You can have down here that historical kind of context. We increase our standard of success from 50% to 65% in fall 2024. And that will kind of help y'all keep track of the changes over time as well. And then again, you have the option for adding related documents. If you want to add, a copy of the quiz that you're using, or if you want to add a copy of the survey that's administered, if you want to add a copy of the data log tracking sheet that is used to collect this data, this information, whatever that is, especially if it's helpful for someone else who may be coming in to take over behind you, you can add those documents here as well. Again, I'll just ask that we not add any examples of student work, student information, or any identifiable student information into the related documents. Again, once you've updated your assessment method, if you are updating it, make sure you click Save. If you've made some changes that you don't want to save, you can just click Close and then exit out when it asks you to go back and save. So that's kind of our process for if we have existing learning outcomes, goals, or assessment methods that we're going to be using. If you are adding new learning outcomes or goals, or if you're going to be adding a new assessment method, that's what we're going to look at next. So remember, when we're in Nuventive, when we're adding something new, you're always going to orientate to the plus sign. So in this instance, where we are here in our administrative support plan or your academic support plan, your academic assessment plan, in that main screen, notice there's nothing up here that says, close or save. We're back in our main plan and results screen. You're going to come up here to that green circle, the plus sign. If you're a support unit, it's going to say add goal statement. If you're an academic unit, it's going to say add a student learning outcome. You're going to click there. That's going to give you a blank goal or student learning outcome screen. So you're going to include your goal or SLO name, your goal or SLO statement, the status. If it's new, it's probably going to be active. The planned assessment cycle, if you're adding it for next year, it's going to be at least 2024, 2025. If you know for sure, and you've already discussed it with your program, your unit, your department, your college, or whatever, that this is going to be assessed for at least 2 years, you could maybe even go ahead and add that 2025, 2026 assessment cycle. And then you're just a little bit ahead of the game. So again, with this goal name or this SLO name, we really want kind of a short descriptor that helps describe what we're going to be looking at. Because if you were talking to me, or if you're talking to, Amanda Davis, or if you're talking to your department head or someone else from your support unit about your goal or SLO, and you just say SLO number 5 or goal number 7, people probably won't know what you're talking about unless they're really up to date on Nuventive. However, if you're talking to them about the multiculturalism and globalism SLO, or if you're talking to them about the strategic planning goal, that type of thing, that's going to help kind of make that connection for them in an easier way. So we do want to try to have some kind of name here. If you do want to still maintain a numbering convention, or maybe it's really helpful because you have a program-specific accreditor and they call this learning outcome number 1, or maybe they call it division number 3, you can still come in and add that. We might just add that in a parentheses or that type of thing. And then we're going to add our goal statements. This is going to be that complete goal statement or student learning outcome statement that describes the improvement that we are seeking. If you've attended any of my, assessment planning sessions over the past year or so, you'll know that something that's really big, especially for our support units, is looking at outcomes rather than outputs when we are measuring our goals. And so an outcome statement is simply things that we do. It's what we kind of show up to work every day and accomplish. So an outcome statement might be, submit payroll, or hire an administrative assistant, or teach students. Those are things that we do. You can check them off the list and say, yep, we hired an administrative assistant, we submitted payroll, I went to class today, check, check, check. Those are things that we do. The output, however, is what we're looking for that measures a quality improvement. So maybe we're trying to submit payroll faster, or maybe we're trying to, reduce the number of updates to payroll requests. So maybe our goal statement is going to be and this would probably be expanded, but timely submission of payroll, or maybe the department will submit payroll revisions within 2 business days. For our learning outcomes, we are not necessarily just looking at students will understand who Shakespeare is. That's kind of a maybe a little bit more complex than a check mark. That's probably close to a check mark, but maybe our SLO statement is going to be students understanding the impact of Shakespearean literature on 21st century, Western literature, whatever that might be. We're looking for that really kind of demonstration of learning that we want to be able to measure and say, yes, our students are prepared. They've learned what we need to know them, what we need them to know from this program. So again, we're looking for outputs rather than outcomes, especially for our support units when we're looking at goals. If you want assistance in writing a student learning outcome or a goal statement, or just looking at something that you're considering, again, please reach out to Amanda or I, and we are more than happy to meet with you and talk that over. So you have, and I know this is not strong alignment, those are just samples names there. So you have, your really strong, beautiful goal statement or SLO statement written and saved, and it looks great. Make sure you save it. And then remember, every new goal or SLO, we need to know how we're going to assess it. So if you add a new goal or add a new SLO, don't forget to come over here to your assessment method card and update that, because we need to know how exactly we're going to be able to show that students have either learned what we want them to learn, or that we've made some kind of service improvement in the area that we're wanting to improve. So again, always orientate to that green circle with a plus sign. And that's going to give us this blank assessment method screen. So again, the exact same thing. You're going to want to select your assessment method status. If it's new, it's very likely going to be active. You're going to want to select your assessment type. This is the type of assessment that you are conducting or administering. If you have a survey that you're sending out through Qualtrics, you can select survey. If you have an essay that students are writing, you can select written assignment or essay. If you find yourself stuck a little bit between, is it a focus group or is it a forum? How am I collecting this information? Field observation, external review, I really don't know which of those I'm using. We have this definitions of assessment method types resource over here on the right-hand side. So if you click on that, it will expand it. And then you'll be able to scroll through and see these definitions for every single assessment method type that's included in this drop-down list. So if you are a little bit on the fence about, is it a focus group or is it a forum, this can help you go through and decide what type of assessment you're administering. And then we're going to add our assessment method description. Again, we want that really rich context in there so that if you win the lottery and you don't come back to A&M-Commerce, someone will be able to kind of pick this up and continue going forward with it. Again, if it's a survey, what's the survey called? Where is it housed? Who's responsible for sending it out? Who does it get sent to? When is it sent? That type of stuff. If you have a capstone assignment or capstone exam, what classes it occur in? Who tells the students about when it's due? What type of student completes the assignment? That type of thing. We really want to know what is assessed, who administers the assessment, who is assessed, a description of the measure, and then when and where it's assessed and administered. Now this when and where, we're not necessarily looking for things like April 15th and BA 348. This is really going to more describe at the end of the program or right before graduation or after students have submitted a portfolio, that type of thing. This is describing when and where in the program or in the services administered something is being offered. We're going to provide that rich description. And again, we have our standard of success here. That's going to be that quantitative measure how we know that we've achieved what we want to achieve. And again, here's those notes. If you want to add anything, feel free to do so. I will let you know if you add notes here. Notes are printed in the 2-column report. So if you run that 2-column report that we'll look at in just a moment, if you have anything in the notes section that will reflect on the report, I will just let y'all know that, so that you're just aware that whatever is put in here can be viewed by other people. So this is helpful information to provide context or remind yourself of certain things, but not necessarily the space and maybe, put other people on blast or anything like that. So once you've made those updates, you have this really, rich assessment method that's been built out. Again, make sure you save it. If you click close, you're going to be able to go back out to where you can see that rich description of what you are doing to assess this goal or student learning outcome. Now, if you come over to results, you're not going to have any results because it's a brand new learning outcome or goal with a brand new assessment method. But again, we've added it for our 24-25 assessment cycle. So in this sample unit, we have our results that we've added. We've updated an existing student learning outcome or goal, and we've also added a new student learning outcome goal and a new assessment method. Are there any questions about adding or updating the assessment plan before I move on? Okay. So the next two things that I want to cover real quick is going to be how to run that 2-column report that we looked at earlier. I guess 3 things real quick. How to run that 2-column report we looked at earlier, how to check and complete your mapping, and then how to access any revisions or requests for revisions. So when we want to run that 2-column report, again, so much of what we do is going to start in our main menu. So you're going to come over here to that main menu, those 3 horizontal white lines, come down to reports right there. The report that's going to be generated on this main screen is going to be a report of your assessment data for this program or unit for all time. It's normally going to be longer than 7 pages. Again, this is just a sample unit, so it's not built out as much as some of our other units are. But you'll be able to see all that historical information. So if you are new to Nuventive, or if you're new to your program or unit, whatever that might be, this could be a really helpful resource to have because it will just give you that overview of what's occurred in the past. If, however, you want to run a targeted report to only look at maybe your 23-24 results or your 24-25 assessment plan, maybe you're going to sit down with your department head or your dean and talk it over, and you don't feel that they need all this context, you really just want that focus report, you come over here to your filters. Whenever you hover over this, it says select filters, and click there, and it will give you a set of filters to use to narrow down your report. So you can narrow your planned assessment cycle by the cycle that you want to look at. Maybe we only want to look at the most recent 2. Maybe for your reporting period, you only want to look at things that were reported for 23-24. And then if you run that report, again, it will produce it in a Word document, so you can download or make edits to that. But you'll notice that even this short report has shortened itself by 3 pages. It's now only 4 pages long because I ran a targeted report to only look at a certain set of data and information. So if you want to download it to save, you can click download, you can save it to your OneDrive, or you can print it if you would like. So you can either print it as a PDF or print a hard copy, and you'll be able to have that hard copy to annotate or make notes on. All right, so whenever we look at mapping, and mapping is very important because we do have a new strategic plan that we'll be adding and editing in Nuventive this upcoming cycle. It will not be due by the 1st. I promise. I know it's gonna be really late and a lot of work to do by then, but when that is available, we'll share that with our IE authors and assist with that. But if you just want to double check or review the mapping that is current for your program or unit, again, come to your main menu and come down to mapping. Let me forget that they did not build that out for that unit. So I'm actually going to use our institutional effectiveness assessment unit as an example. So again, come to your main menu and mapping. And you'll be able to have multiple maps available to you kind of in this left-hand drop-down right here. So when you click on that, you should at minimum be able to see a marketable skills and then your college or division level map. So for our academic programs or for our support units that align with student learning outcomes, you'll very likely have this marketable skills map that's been created and updated where you're going to be able to articulate and map out which of your goals or SLOs support the different marketable skills of our institution. If for any reason this program review coordination goal supported career management for students, in order to create that mapping, you would simply click in the cell and you would have that green square with the X right there. And that would show that intersection and that alignment here. If you click on something that you don't mean to map, oh no, this program review coordination does not actually support critical thinking or problem solving, you would just click again to remove it. And as always, make sure you save your updates and your changes. If you want to double check for your college or division map, you just come over to this main menu and select your college or division level map. And then you'll be able to come through and again, complete that mapping and that update here to show where that alignment of SLOs or goals occurs to support the different goals of your college or division. And then finally, if you have received an email from a reviewer asking for revisions, first off, let me just say that does not mean that anything's wrong. It simply means that they have reviewed your assessment plan or your assessment results and have seen some opportunities to improve or strengthen them. It doesn't mean that you've done bad work necessarily. We're just finding ways to add information or strengthen the information that's in there. So let's say you get that email, there's a revision that's needed. You can come over to this main menu and then plan, review, and approval. You'd want to make sure you know which level of review had completed the request for revision. So if you got something from your IE representative, you would come down this IE representative review. Let's see if I have anything in here. So this is a bit of an older sample here, but let's just say that this had been recently completed for this most recent assessment cycle, 23-24, and had requested revisions. In order to be able to view that completed rubric, you would come over here to those ellipses right here and come down to view or print. And that would open that rubric or that report for you so you can see exactly what revisions have been requested. It's very likely that there will be some text or some comments either here right after the IE representative review or within the individual rubric items themselves that provide directions on what needs to be completed or what needs to be updated or changed. So you would just follow those prompts, go back to your plan and results, make those changes or revisions, and then email your IE representative, your dean VP, your department head, whomever it was that contacted you for revisions, to let them know that that's been complete and is ready for their review. So that is a pretty fast, but an overview of what's going to be needed by that September 1st due date. So when we look at Nuventive, the IE review approval process has quite a few people that are involved in it. So it kicks off with our IE authors. Very likely, y'all have all been working in Nuventive already, entering those annual assessment results and providing updates for the annual plan. When that's done, following September 1st or that week after September 1st, that's when this information is available for review by the department head or supervisor and your college or division IE representative. This review occurs concurrently. So there is a chance that you could get a request for revisions from both, individuals, especially if they're separate people, or they may both approve and move it on to the dean VP. There is not a submit, there is not a final, there's not any kind of button to press in Nuventive other than saving your updates that will mark or notify these individuals that it's ready for review. The expectation is simply that by the time that we've hit that due date, that September 1st, that information is ready for review by this level of reviewer. If you are going to experience a delay in getting your data done or in Nuventive, maybe you have, some medical issues that have come up, that type of thing, just be in contact with these individuals to let them know so that they know when to expect that information. So just keep them in the loop. After these levels have completed their review, it then goes to the Dean VP for their review. They complete a separate rubric and they will analyze that IE assessment report and review, approve or request revisions. At any stage, if revisions are requested, these would come back to that author who would make those changes, and then it would again be notified for that level review that those changes were made and ready for final review. And then at that final stage, the report information and data will stay in Nuventive and be available for Amanda and I to look over and provide assistance with. So if you're changing your SLO or goal, should you edit the existing or create a new SLO or goal? We recommend editing an existing SLO or goal if the change is primarily grammatical in nature, or if your assessment method and results still align with that edited SLO or goal. So again, if you're really just changing the class where an exam occurs or where a paper is completed, but it's not significantly changing the assessment itself, you can just make those updates. It is worth noting that any edits that you make to that existing SLO or goal will immediately reflect in your report and be associated with both past and present or active result entries. So it's just helpful to keep in mind, especially as you're reporting your results. If you're changing that SLO or goal, again, we recommend creating a new SLO or goal if that change is more substantive in nature rather than just wording or grammar. If you're totally changing the learning outcome itself, previously you were assessing basket weaving and now you're assessing, underwater meditation, that type of thing. That's a pretty significant change to what it is that you're assessing the learning of. So that would be a new student learning outcome. If you intend to assess something different, or if your existing assessment methods cannot or will not be used for that SLO or goal. Again, if you create a new SLO or goal, please do not delete that old information that provides that rich historical context. Instead, you just mark it phased out. And so again, looking at our assessment methods, edit or create new, we recommend editing the existing assessment method if what you're changing primarily relates to the administration, the assessment method type itself is not changing, if it's still a capstone assignment, and it's still assessing the exact same learning, maybe we're just changing the name of it, that type of thing, that's really just an edit. Results for the revised method of assessment can still be meaningfully compared with past results. And if the method remains the same, but that standard of success is changing. So again, if you're increasing your standard of success because y'all have been routinely hitting 80% of students have been, satisfied or extremely satisfied with the service, and so now we're looking for 90%, that would just be an edit to your standard of success. That would not require a new assessment method. And again, any edits made will immediately reflect, so it's just helpful to keep in mind for yourself and your reviewers as they're looking at those reports. And then we recommend creating a new assessment method if what you're changing relates more to what's being measured and how it's being measured, because it's changing the method itself. The assessment method type is changing. If you are assessing the same learning, but you have previously been using a capstone assignment, and now we're looking at that through a field observation, that's going to be a new assessment method. Or if results for the revised method cannot be meaningfully compared with past results, that's going to show a lack of alignment. So again, if you add a new assessment method, we just ask that you do not remove that old data because that provides that really rich history. A few things to keep in mind. Results that have already been entered for a past cycle should not be changed or updated. Leave them as they are. Consider them mocked. We're only adding new results. Again, inconclusive is only utilized if results were unable to be collected. You are not required to add documentation. But if you do, please make sure there's no identifying student information. You're going to want to add that 2024-2025 assessment cycle date, to your assessment plan. And if you're adding a new learning outcome or goal, make sure you update your map that we looked at earlier. A few more things to keep in mind. If the existing assessment plan, SLO goals, assessment methods, anything are being edited or are changing, just uncheck active in your assessment method. Ensure your assessment type still aligns with that method if you're changing the assessment type. verify your standard of success, update the name of the existing SLO or goal, add dates if necessary, just kind of those things as you're going through and just kind of cleaning them up, just making sure everything is up to date and reflecting what is occurring. And then finally, I know I talked about it a lot, but just make sure you save your work. I would hate for y'all to do all this work and then it be lost with that kind of weird double negative question that it asks. So just make sure you save your work as you go. Again, there are available resources and support for using Nuventive. To log in, you'd click that gold Nuventive login button. We have our deadlines and due dates listed below. And then here under assessment, we have different assessment resources as well. So we have our instructions for annual assessment reporting, report examples, and then those internal and external assessment resources. The training videos for Nuventive, I'm still working on updating these larger training videos, but they are still relevant, even though Nuventive itself has changed. This will just kind of take you over that information, whereas these snapshot navigation videos have all been updated. So these will reflect that new look and feel of Nuventive, and will just very quickly help take you through how to navigate to the different areas. So if you want assistance in just how do I get to where I can edit or add my SLO or goal, this is a really short, less than 2-minute video to help remind you of how to get to where you can edit that SLO or goal, or for locating rubric revisions, that type of thing. So these will just very quickly help remind you how to get somewhere. And these are longer training videos that kind of go through the why of what we're doing. Don't forget to schedule a time with IE to work on your assessment report, or if you have any questions, you can contact Amanda Davis or I, and we're both happy to work with you one-on-one or for a larger session with your division or your department. And then again, we always collect data on what we're doing here. So if you don't mind grabbing your phone and completing the training evaluation form, we would love to hear from you. Let us know if this was the information that you needed, if it was helpful, if there's something that we or that I need to expand on or talk through more or show different examples, anything like that. We'd love to hear from you guys, because we are also continually improving our processes as well. So I'm going to stop the recording here real quick.